Hello, learners. Welcome to our session today. I'm your instructor, CPA Aringo Frederick. So it's just a continuation of what we are looking at our costing methods. Remember, what we did previously, we had talked of the aspect of batch costing, and also we had talked of job costing. So in our class today, we are going to introduce a very new concept, and that's the concept of process costing. This is so very common when it comes to our examinations. So it will be very ideal that we understand the whole concept behind process costing, so that whenever we have it in our questions, or rather whenever we have it in our exams, it will also be very simple for us to understand. So whenever we are looking at our process costing, just as the word suggests, process costing, the aspect of process, meaning that for me to arrive at our final product, you'll find that this product will undergo several stages. And these stages are the one that you're calling them as what? As processes. It's a type of a product costing technique whereby the product involved should undergo various processes. Take for example, whenever we're talking of these processes of costing, and they should also be form of related. Take for example, when you are producing a car. When you are producing a car, in this case, we are looking at a production, and basically you are looking at production of a motor vehicle or a car. So in producing this car, what will happen? In producing this car, you'll find that the first stage, probably it will be to collect the materials for us to produce this car. So I'll have to collect our materials. This should be my first process, collection of materials. Then after we've collected these materials, you'll find that the second stage will be to assembling of these materials that we've collected. So in this case, you'll find that I'll talk of what? Assembling of the materials that we've collected. So talk of assembling of materials. So looking at the assembly of materials, ideally, if we assemble these materials, meaning that as at the end of the day, I'll come and arrive at talk of the shape of now that car. I'll arrive at the shape of the car. So in this case, I'll come and arrive at the shape of our car that we are designing. So we should be having something like that. So that is the shape of the car that we'll be having. We've done all this process of I've collected the materials. It was our first process, assembling of the materials to give this car a shape, to give the car the shape. So after we've done like that, the next process, you'll find that it will be in regard to the next process now, the next stage. After I've assembled the car and give it a shape, you'll find that the next stage here, talk of this next stage, the next stage after assembling and all that. Probably the next stage will be upon us, or upon this company to do what? At least to place the wheel of the car. They're going to place the tires, in that I should be having the tires of that car. So remember, you're just in that process. So after you're done with that process, you'll find that the next process, probably I'll come and do what? And do the painting. I'll come and do the painting of the car. I'll come and do the painting of the car. I'll come and do the painting of this car of ours. The one that we've already collected, we've put the wheel. Now the next process, it will be upon us to do what? To do the painting. So we can do the painting of the car, whichever color that you want. This is another process. Do the painting of the car. So after we've done with painting, Now, the next process probably will be now putting all the required elements, like say I place the windows, I place everything. So these are finished. Talk of the finished product now. Finished product as that car. So you'll find that this is a process that it has, this is a kind of process costing, whereby you'll find that they are independent. Yes, I'm producing this product, but this product will undergo several stages before we arrive at the finished product. Whereas you'll find also the output of this stage is very important on this stage. The output of assembling stage will be very important on the aspect of this stage. Then the output of this stage will also be very important on this stage, meaning that they are kind of relating. And this is what you are talking of process costing. There's that aspect of process, there's that aspect of stages. So ideally, that is the main concept behind process costing. So it will be upon us to analyze whatever that we've set, have we really achieved it? And in that case, do we have any losses that we've incurred? Both the one that we were expecting and probably the one that we are not expecting. So all this is a concept of process costing. This is a process of, the concept of process costing. So after we've gotten this concept well, now I want us to go and define process costing. I want us to go and define process costing. So whenever we are talking of process costing, what will we note, or what are we supposed to know whenever we are talking of process costing? So in simple terms, we normally say that process costing is, process costing, looking at process costing, we normally say that it is a product costing method. It is a product costing method. This is a product costing method. Product costing method. Product costing method. Product costing method. Applicable. Where similar products are produced. Where similar products are produced, continuously in a series of production. Are produced continuously in a series of production. In a series of production. In a series of production. In a series of production steps. In a series of production steps, known as process. Known as processes. Known as processes. Known as processes. So ideally, that is a process costing. And the beauty part of it, I've given you an example of whenever you want to produce motor vehicle, probably the stages that will be taking place. So when we are talking of a process costing, ideally, the main concept that you should always understand, first of all, is a costing method. And this costing method is applicable where similar products are produced. And this production should be a continuous production, meaning that you are producing them in a series of production steps. In a series of production steps known as processes. So ideally, that's the key concept that you should always grasp, first of all, whenever you're talking of what? Process costing. Now, after we've gotten the concept, after we probably understand that concept of our process costing, there are some elements that also we should always be very keen with whenever we are dealing with process costing. Probably in these stages, yes, we are doing our production. We can anticipate some losses that probably you can incur during the stages. And in the event that probably I'd anticipated on a certain number of losses, but probably I incur less loss than anticipated, or I incur more loss than anticipated. How will we treat such cases? So that should take us to a very important concept, which we'll be looking at also under process costing. And in that case, we'll be looking at several process, or rather we'll be looking at several components on definition such as normal loss and all that. But before you go there, I want us to understand from the definition, I want us to understand some of the key features of process costing. So that should take us to features of process costing. Also a very key element. Talk of features of process costing. What are the features of the process costing that we should be very familiar with? Features of process costing. Features of process costing. So number one feature of process costing that you must always have in mind, just from the definition, we can say that similar units are produced. Similar units are produced continuously. Similar units are produced. Similar units are produced continuously. Similar units are produced continuously. Similar units are produced continuously. That is our number one feature. Just from the definition, you can get that feature. Then number two feature of process costing, we normally say that the continuous nature of production results in some units. The continuous nature of production. The continuous nature of production. The continuous nature of production results in some units, results in some units being incomplete, at the end, being incomplete at the end of the period. At the end of the period. So basically, this is where we'll also be looking at key concept that we'll be studying, known as equivalent units. But that one is for later on. Talk of number three feature. We can also mention that loss is a common feature. Loss is a common feature. Loss is a common feature. Loss is a common feature due to spoilage. Talk of wastage. We can also talk of evaporation, etc. Because whenever we are producing these elements, we are going to anticipate that I'm going to incur a certain loss. And these loss that we are anticipating will later on call them what? Normal loss. You are expecting such losses to occur. So you are saying that amongst the features of process costing is that loss is a common feature due to aspect of spoilage, wastage, evaporation, etc. Then talk of number four feature. We normally talk of costs cannot be identified with individuals' products. Costs cannot be identified. Costs cannot be identified with individual products. Costs cannot be identified with individual products. So these are very key features when it comes to process costing. So first of all, I should understand that similar units are produced continuously, and we saw that when you are looking at the concept behind process costing. Also, you are saying that number two feature is that the continuous nature of production results in some units being incomplete at the end of the period. Because as much as we'll be producing these units, you'll find that as at the end of the period, probably I wouldn't have cleared the units. I wouldn't have cleared the final product. So we'll be talking of elements such as equivalent units, and also we'll be looking at a case whereby I'm having work in progress because the process is not yet complete. Then note 3, or rather feature number 3, we are saying that loss is a common feature due to spoilage, wastage, and also evaporation. So you'll find that this is also very common whenever it comes to aspect of process costing, because during this process, due to various aspects that will affect the nature of our operation, we can anticipate to incur certain losses. So that's why we're saying that is very key as a common feature. And also we are saying that costs cannot be identified with the individual products, because you'll find that this is a process that is taking place. So I can't attach a specific cost to this product completely. So that's why we are saying that it is cost cannot be identified with individual products. So after we've gotten that concept clearly, now I want us to understand some of what the elements that we are talking about here. So that should give us, term them as key definitions under process costing. The definitions that you must always have in mind whenever you are looking at process costing. So you can term them as key definitions. You can term them as what? Key definitions. Key definitions. Key definitions. What are some of these elements that you must always have in mind whenever you are dealing with process costing? So number one key definition, we can talk of the aspect of losses, because here you are talking of loss is a common feature due to spoilage or wastage. So looking at this case number one, we can talk of normal loss. We can talk of losses. We can talk of losses. And looking at our losses, we can talk of the first loss known as normal loss. Talk of number one, normal loss. Normal loss. So in this case, under process costing, at any given point, whenever I'll be talking of normal loss, what should ring at the back of our mind? What should we always have at the back of our mind whenever we are talking of the normal loss? Normal loss, ideally, these are losses that we are anticipating for them to occur during our processes. So these are the losses that we do anticipate for them to occur. So in simple terms, we normally say that normal loss, these are expected losses. This is the expected. This is the expected loss. This is the expected. This is the expected loss. This is the expected loss, and they are unavoidable. And they are unavoidable. And they are unavoidable. They are unavoidable. They are unavoidable. So, why are we saying they are unavoidable? They are unavoidable. Probably due to the experience that this company has on its production. They normally anticipate certain losses to occur because I've been in this process for a given period of time. So I know how my production normally takes place, and during our production, there are some losses that we normally incur. So due to this experience, you'll find that at any given point the company is producing, they are going to anticipate some certain losses are going to occur, that they are going to occur. Example of such causes of losses, talk of evaporation, talk of probably spoilage, talk of wastage. At least you have a database of identifying the expected loss that you can have in our production. So after we've talked of normal loss, I'll also want us to talk of number two type of loss known as abnormal loss. That should give us abnormal loss. Number two definition, talk of abnormal loss. So ideally, when you are talking of abnormal loss, what should ring at the back of our mind? Whenever you're talking of abnormal loss, what should ring at the back of our mind? You'll find that abnormal loss will occur where probably our losses are more than what we had anticipated. Say for example, like in this case, I had anticipated that maybe out of the 1,000 units that we are putting into production, say that we are anticipating 10% of that is going to go into waste, meaning that the loss, I'm going to have a 10% loss in regard to the 1,000 units that we've put in our production. So our anticipation is that out of 1,000, 100 units will go as waste. But this is anticipation, this is expected. That is what you are expecting. But when it comes to actual, maybe actual loss assuming is 150 units. This is actual. Actual loss is 150 units. So in this case, we'll find that, I'd anticipated for 400 units to occur, but my actual is 150, meaning that I'm having 50 units extra, the one that I hadn't anticipated. So the 50 is the one that you are going to term as abnormal loss. I'm incurring more loss than I had anticipated. So over and above the loss that you are incurring on our expected is what you are terming it as what? As the abnormal loss. So basically, looking at abnormal loss, you can just note something and say that abnormal loss, these are extra units lost above the normal loss units. So we are talking of these are losses, these are losses, these are losses, these are losses above the expected losses. These are losses above the expected losses. So in the event that we've said, in the event that I'm incurring more loss than I'd anticipated, so, or you can say that loss incurred, these are loss that we are going to incur over and above what we had anticipated, over and above what you had anticipated. That's why you're saying these are losses above the expected. These are losses above the expected, expected. So you'll find that the one that I've just given you here, the illustration whereby we are looking at a case, maybe I'd anticipated to incur 100 units as a loss, but I'm incurring 150. So over and above is what our normal loss is, what you're terming it as what? As abnormal loss, These are losses above the expected. These are losses above the expected loss. Above the expected loss. You can add it there, above the expected loss. So that is what you're going to term it as what? As abnormal loss. Then number 3 definition that we should also be having at the back of our mind is what you're terming it as what? Abnormal gain. What is abnormal gain? What is abnormal gain? So you'll find the same case with the concept of abnormal gain, which I'll also want you to understand here very clearly. Whenever we are looking at abnormal gain, ideally I'll be looking at a case whereby, say for example, I'd anticipated our anticipated loss, assuming our anticipated loss probably was I'd expected us to incur the 10% of 1,000 units. So in that case, probably I'll be having 100. But now our actual loss is less than what I'd anticipated. Maybe our actual loss is 50. So you'll find that I'd anticipated 100 units to be our loss, but the actual loss that I'm achieving is 50. So in this case, yes, I'd be having 50 as our difference. But this 50 is what you're going to term it as abnormal gain, meaning that in this case, these are units of losses that are below what you had anticipated. So basically in that case, we can clearly say that this represents expected loss, or rather talk of abnormal gain. We normally say that it represents the expected loss transferred out of good output, meaning that there are units which were expected to be lost, but they were not lost. So we are saying that they are units, they are units which were expected. They are units which were expected, They are units which were expected. They are units which were expected to. So we are saying that there are units which were expected, to be lost, but they were not lost. To be lost, but they were not lost. They were not lost. So basically, just as what I mentioned earlier on, whereby I'm anticipating to incur more loss, but in the actual case, I'm incurring less loss than what we had anticipated. So this will occur whereby I'm incurring less loss than what I had anticipated, meaning that what we were expecting to be lost, probably in this case, we are not going to lose them. That's why we are talking of what? Of abnormal gain. We are talking of abnormal gain. So key difference between abnormal loss and abnormal gain is that abnormal gain will occur whereby, or rather abnormal loss will occur whereby I'm incurring more loss than what I'd anticipated. Whereas abnormal loss will incur whereby I'm incurring less loss than what I'd anticipated. So we are talking of less loss is incurred. Less loss is incurred. Less loss is incurred than what was anticipated. Than what was anticipated. Than what was anticipated or expected. Less loss is incurred than what was anticipated. Whereas in this case you are saying more loss is incurred compared to what was anticipated. Ideally, those are some of the main terms that we should always be very familiar with whenever we are dealing with what? Whenever we are dealing with aspect of process costing. Also, probably talk of the final one, but that one you're going to look at it deep later on. Later on. We normally talk of what is known as we can talk of scrap, assuming we can talk of scrap as part of also our key definition. So whenever we're talking of scrap, ideally what should ring at the back of our mind? Whenever we're talking of scrap, what should ring at the back of our mind? So scrap, this is a value. Yes, I'd anticipated this loss to occur. But as at the end of the day, as I've incurred the losses, you'll find that still I'm going to dispose the units of losses. The value that you're going to receive after disposing the units that we've counted them as losses. These are what you are going to term them as what? As scrap. So basically, looking at scrap, we normally say that these are discarded materials with some recovery value. So talk of discarded materials with some recovery value. So we're talking of discarded materials with some recovery value, which is either disposed of with some recovery value. So basically you can just note like that. Discarded materials with some recovery value. So in this event, what you should understand is that assuming that I'd anticipated to incur loss of 100 units, talk of 100 units being our losses, normal loss. So yes, I've incurred the loss of 100 units. So looking at these losses, these materials, they are not going to waste. So in such an event, probably I've noted that out of 100 units, I can still dispose, say like 50 units. So these 50 units are what you're terming them as what? As scrap. The 50 units are what you're terming them as scrap. Mark that very well, my good students. You are saying, at this point, I'd anticipated to have 100 units as loss. Then we've realized that out of 100 units, probably I can dispose of the 50 units out of the losses. So these 50 units that I've realized I can still get value out of them is what you're going to term them as what? As scrap. The discarded materials with some recovery value. It means also that at this point I can dispose the units discarded. And the value that you're going to earn after you dispose these units are what you're going to term as what? Scrap value. So after looking at these key definitions, later on we'll be talking of elements like equivalent units. But the key definitions that you should always have in mind on the basics of process costing are this. And I believe we've clearly explained all the component in relation to that. We've clearly explained all the concept in relation to that. So I want you to join me in the next session, whereby we are going to look at the aspect of presentations of these accounts. How are we supposed to prepare our process costing accounts? How are we supposed to prepare our process costing accounts? To that juncture, thank you so much, and let us meet in our next session. I was your instructor, CPA Arengo Frederick. Thank you.